Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages. Well, as all of you are probably very well aware at this point, Star Wars, of course, has now introduced, Disney Star Wars has now introduced trans ideology into all of their clone troopers out there. Yes, because creatures that designed to literally only go out there and fight for war, that are literally bred from a vat and are trained from childhood with an upgraded, increased speed of aging out there. Yes, boys and girls, one of those extremely trained, extremely dedicated, extremely mind-warped soldiers out there literally now is confused about their gender somehow. And well, Disney Star Wars, of course, this is not something new for us in any way, shape, or form. We know the kind of agenda that Kathleen Kennedy loves to push, and now they have their very own champion coming out there and white knighting for them, defending for them, saying this is amazing, this is wonderful, this is fabulous, and anyone that goes against it is a bigot. And that would be none other than BattleTech author Bryan Young, ladies and gentlemen. And trust me, this woke psychopath deserves to be laughed at, ridiculed, and shamed into oblivion, because he is perfectly okay with pushing a dangerous and very, in some cases, actually deadly ideology onto children out there and defends it with his last breath. Yes, boys and girls, this man is completely and totally possessed by the spirit of the age, and it is the exact kind of champion that you would expect to go out there and defend Disney Star Wars and the kind of evil things they were trying to expose children to. So we're going to check out this article from thatparkplace.com, getting all the juicy details of exactly what this moron has said. But before we do, if you do enjoy our content, hit that like button, share with all your friends, and subscribe or follow if you have not already, boys and girls, because we are grinding, we are growing, and I could not do that without every single one of you. Also, leave us a comment in the section down below. Are you a BattleTech fan out there? Does it surprise you at all knowing Bryan Young's past? Or are you out there going, I can't believe they're still trying to do this nonsense to children? Well, let us know what you think about all that in the comment section down below. And if you'd like to help support the channel, please check out all the links in the description. It really helps keep the lights on around here. So thatparkplace.com and our dear sweet John F. Trent. BattleTech author Bryan Young approves of Star Wars marketing transgender character to children. Oh, color us shocked there. Bryan Young, the author of numerous BattleTech stories, shared his approval of Star Wars marketing a transgender character to children. The Walt Disney Company and Lucasfilm recently released a new book titled Star Wars: The Secrets of the Clone Troopers that is marketed towards children and features a so-called transgender character, Clone Trooper, a male pretending to be a woman in this case. Because, yeah, all the troopers from the beginning were actually dudes, and only later on was any of that kind of stuff changed or introduced. But literally, it's part of Dave Filoni's nonsense, and I don't consider anything Dave Filoni's done canon. Dave Filoni can eat a dick, and he probably would, especially if his wife told him to. But it's one of those situations where if you haven't already heard about all this kind of stuff, we can go over all of this real quick. We can just kind of show you some of the highlights of the picture. This is the Clone Trooper. She's known as Sister. Yada yada yada. If you don't know about all of this stuff, go check out my other channel, The Common Nerd 2, where you can see some of the shorter videos that I do going over all of these topics away from a lot of the long form content that you have on this channel. Links should be in the description down below. I'll have to add all of that stuff in. But either way, it's just Common Nerd 2. It's pretty easy to find. So, right here as we go, as noted by That Park Place's Jonas J. Campbell, the book is being marketed towards children. Disney just released a Star Wars Clone Wars book featuring a male trooper called Sister who uses she/her pronouns with literally the trans flag painted armor. I mean, could they have gotten any more on the nose with this nonsense? The description says the book is for young fans and children. Oh, yes, because we know they want to damage and destroy your children like they've all just been hurt themselves. Hurt people, and they know this is the only way to perpetuate their ideology, because guess what? They don't have kids. They try to get a hold of yours. Defend your children. In fact, Simon & Schuster's listing of the book states, learn the secrets of the Clone Troopers in this interactive, fully illustrated guide for readers for all ages. Oh, yes. So the character first appeared in E.K. Johnson's Queen's Hope back in 2022. Her name is Sister because her brothers wanted to make sure everyone knew that she belonged. Oh, yes. And of course, Sister doesn't have a huge part in the book, but she just wanted to make sure that he got to interact with. But she's functionally immortal. Plot armor that makes Darth Maul look like a pushover. Yes, boys and girls, she's going to be the bestest clone trooper ever. Color us shocked there. So it just goes on and on with all of that kind of stuff, but this is where things get interesting. So as initially reported by John Delarose at Fandom Pulse, BattleTech writer Bryan Young not only approved of the character, but the fact that the character was being marketed towards children. Yes, this sick weird out there. Look, I have no problem with people that are adults going out there and living their lives any way they want. I'm kind of a live and let live guy, but when you go out there and target children, when you go out there and expressively do this, there's something fundamentally wrong with an ideology that goes out there and defends going out there and targeting children with this kind of insane things and trying to sexualize children before they have any idea what any of that stuff should ever be. This is stuff that should be left alone to the parents, not exposed to kids to confuse them and boggle their minds by a bunch of woke corporations out there like the Disney company. But of course, that's all okay with John Delarose because he's completely and totally possessed by the spirit of the age. I feel bad for all of you BattleTech fans out there. So Young responded to the news from For San Antonio, which I think is crazy, to the fact that they responded, but that's pretty cool that they wrote about this, probably in a very positive light, of course. Coverage of the inclusion of the character, writing, "Sister is a great character, and the headline seems to imply maybe it's not appropriate for all ages. But it totally is. I don't understand the uproar here." So literally, it's one of those situations. A new Star Wars, this is what the news from San Antonio says. This is the headline that he responded to. A new Star Wars book released Tuesday has reintroduced a transgender clone trooper to the iconic franchise. Google Book describes the new release as a fully illustrated guide for readers of all ages. The book is listed as juvenile fiction. So it sounds like they might have a little bit of a problem with it, or at least they're making you fully aware of everything that happened. But of course, Bryan Young is having a meltdown. And I love this right here. So Bryan Young has a little bit of he's like, "Sister is a great character. I doubt you even knew Sister existed before this news article was out there." Let's be completely honest, because guess what? Nobody else in the Fellowship had any idea this character existed because nobody buys and reads Disney Star Wars books anymore. All you got to do is look at the sales numbers. So Bryan Young says, "Sister is a great character, and the headline seems to imply maybe she's not appropriate for all ages. But it totally is. I don't understand the uproar here." Notice he got 230 responses, and the majority of them are laughing emojis. He is being laughed at by what he said here. Adam Weasel says, Bryan Young says, "Go mutilate your kids some more, idiot." And a hashtag long live Blaine. Don't know what that means, but I'm also not a BattleTech guy either. So Young attempted to justify his comments by claiming that Jeddah nurtured the clone troopers individually. But, like, you watched the Clone Wars, right? Actually, no, I couldn't stand the Clone Wars whatsoever. I tried several times getting into it when I was actually still excited about the future of Disney Star Wars, all that kind of stuff. No, it bored me to tears, and I couldn't stand it. And then guess what? I lay that blame solely at Dave Filoni's feet. Hashtag the Clone Wars sucked. And the Jedi nurtured individuality in the clones. They all had nicknames, different personalities, wants, and goals, even as clones. A harsh contrast to the faceless numbered conscripts of the Empire Stormtroopers after Operation Warmantle, where they took individuals and ground that out of them by the time of the original trilogy. You must not be into that into Star Wars if that's an issue. Oh, aren't you clever? How much Wikipedia time did it take for you to look all of that stuff out? So this is another one too, right? So Reed Jeffrey replies here, says, "You do realize this is all make-believe and fiction, right? Why are we putting our BS into the Star Wars universe? They had female clones. Hell, look at the Bad Batch to see that. There is no need for this woke BS unless it's to cater to a small percentage of a drum-banging noisemakers who demand this sort of thing." And it's that modern audience that we talk about all the time that does not exist in any real shape or form. Otherwise, Hogwarts Legacy would not have been the #1 selling game of all of 2023, and guess what? The Marvels would have been the smash box office hit of the same year. And guess what happened? Yeah, the Marvels lost Disney hundreds of millions of dollars. This new modern audience doesn't exist. So he decides to respond to this. What BS? Star Wars has been political allegory since George Lucas started writing in the midst of the Vietnam War and wrote the rebellion as an allegory for the Vietnam Vader Palestine, yada, yada, yada. We've literally heard this bullshit argument a million times. It is not a political allegory for the Vietnam War. I'm pretty sure George Lucas has even come out and said that. Yes. Is anybody influenced by the things that are currently happening around in their culture? Yes. Did he live through the Vietnam War and during that era? Yes, absolutely. Is it going to influence you? Sure. But there's much bigger allegories towards the bad guys, the Nazis of World War II, than there is of any kind of Vietnam nonsense. Because guess what? If you look into what a lot of the Viet Cong did, they were not the rebellion you want to stick your basis behind. But of course, he doesn't actually care about reality. He only cares about living in his delusional echo chamber where all of the people around him pat him on the back and tell him how good and woke he is and how much of a good compliant sheep he is with the spirit of the age. So this is another one. James Richards says, why do people have an entrance with this? Seriously, this is what he goes. He goes, why is it problematic for sci-fi and fantasy to reflect better representation and explore allegory and more stories? Why is that somehow a problem? Is it because you're threatened somehow? Oh, that's right. You're a transphobe. You're scared of trans people. No, what I'm scared of is their ideology influencing my children and corrupting and destroying their mind and having them end up offing themselves later on down the road. That's what I've got a problem with. So somebody else out here decides to reply to what he says here, that it's deeply weird about being upset because it glorifies, this is James Ridner. He says, because it glorifies a mental illness and kids really don't need to be groomed with this kind of sickness. People like you want more kids to get confused and become sick. A completely and totally common sense take that lines up with all the evidence that we've seen over the last decade or so of people like this. Go talk to any detransitioner and listen to their story and tell me this isn't a mental illness that is being perverted onto people and forced ideology that is shoved down their throats. But Young, oh, no. Of course, he's totally down for the cult. Being trans isn't a sickness any more than being blonde is. Where did you pick up this nonsense? Oh, fucking really? Because guess what? Gender confusion, that whole little being confused about that kind of stuff out there was an actual clinical diagnosis of a mental illness up until the woke completely and totally infested the psychiatric situations in the United States and then removed it from there. Yes, being confused about your gender ideology is a mental fucking disorder, you dumbass. But you're not a dumbass. No, you're just possessed by the spirit of the age and will deny all reality just to push your agenda. Because literally, you're born blonde. You're not born in the wrong body with the wrong genitalia. That's a mental illness that needs to be treated properly. And if you actually knew anything about any of that kind of gender confusion stuff, you'd know that it mostly affected boys between the ages of 4 and 6. Not a bunch of teenage girls going through puberty. But of course, reality and the truth doesn't matter to you, only pushing your agenda. Oh, he wrote trans is an ideology like being black. Wait, what? What? Brett Kingsley responds to here, right? No age is appropriate to introduce a character that promotes and attempts to normalize transgender ideology. It's not normal for one. The entirety of the trans movement is completely inauthentic. Anyone promoting this movement to children should be jailed for child abuse. Which begs the question, why are adults so eager to push this on impressionable children? Yes, why do we need to make impressionable children think about their genitalia in any way, shape, or form? What kind of fucking sick, twisted individual wants to expose this to kids? Oh, that's right. You're trying to over-sexualize the kids because we know what you want to really do with them, don't we, pedo boys? So Young responds, what are you talking about? Trans is an ideology like being black is. Oh, really? So why is it so much more prevalent now than what it was in literally the centuries before this? Because hermaphrodites have always existed, but they're literally less than 0.1% of the population. That's not what this is. This is a mental infection. This is a disease. This is a virus that is corrupting the minds of easily influenced people out there. Trans is an ideology like being black is, or an American. I think country allegiance is way more offensive and definitely learned. Oh yes, respecting and loving the country that you were born in, that raised you in, and gave you the culture and society that gave you all the opportunities to make all this money that you've made, Bryan Young. Yes, it's wrong to be proud of that fact. But no, they're born trans. They're born that way. I remember hearing this argument throughout like the 90s and the early 2000s about gay people too, right? They looked for decades trying to find a quote unquote gay gene. And the studies that came out and said it actually did happen, yeah, as soon as they were put under any kind of scrutiny out there, found out it was completely and totally false. No one is born like this. God does not make mistakes. The world does. Men do. Humanity does. The cult certainly does. Trans is inherent to a person and not something they can change. Oh, you mean like cutting off your genitalia, putting on a dress, and to be pretending to something you're not? That you're literally born with right down to your bones and your DNA? Because guess what? It doesn't matter if you cut off your junk. It doesn't matter if you wear a dress and tell everybody you're pretty and force other people around you to pander and take part in your delusion. When they bury you in the ground and when an archaeologist digs up your body in 100 years, they're going to look at your hips and go, male, female. And that's all that's going to be about to it. It is down to your bones. No one is born in the wrong body. You sick, twisted fuck, Bryan Young. Not allowing kids to learn about it is only going to cause them problems. For kids who aren't trans, it's going to make them fear trans folks and make them bigots. Fear, this is literally the exact same kind of argument that racists make. Well, kids are born racist. They automatically look at people that are different from them and they just can't stand it. No. It's literally the exact same thing. Honestly, the only thing that's going to confuse kids is because they look like fucking dudes in dresses. And that little boy or that little girl is going to ask, Mommy, why is that man wearing a dress? Mommy, why is that man trying to pee next to me in the bathroom? Mommy, why is a man following me into the bathroom? That's the issue we have with this, you sick, twisted fuck. For trans kids, it's going to increase their suicide rates and make them more confused and frustrated, struggling who they are. You are, quite frankly, espousing a monstrous ideology, lacking sense and compassion. Oh, really? Then explain why England, one of the most progressive countries on earth that is totally down with everything woke, shut down their children's trans clinic. Oh, that's right. As Ray points out, nothing that encourages a 41% suicide attempt is appropriate for all ages. Oh, but that's okay. It has nothing to do with the ideology intentionally breaking and confusing people's brains and making them not think that they're actually in the body they're supposed to. No. It's all your fault. You're the bigot. It's your fault that suicide rate is so high. That suicide rate is because of bigots and suppressing the knowledge and acceptance of trans folks, not their existence. Get a clue, dude. The suppression and the bigotry is a problem, not the acceptance. It's always the problem. It's sad how bigots never seem to learn that. Well, it's weird how those statistics stay consistent no matter where you live and no matter what culture you're surrounded by. It's almost like it doesn't matter how accepted you are when you try to deny God's intention for your own physical body out there. It confuses and breaks your brain and causes you to literally lose your mind. This is insane. And of course, they go on. Shout out to John Trent giving us all the Catholic stuff, talking about the Catholic ideology, gender and ideology, how it confuses people, how it completely violates God's law. And guess what? We have found time and time again that throughout history, you don't have to go through the Bible. You can go through you can go through Rome. You can go through any of that kind of stuff out there. You look at the fall of any society and any collapse out there. What is it? More often than not, it is sexual immorality, right? Is what it all ends up coming down to. Things not lining up the way they're supposed to be. So you really want to know what causes these suicide rate with trans people? Telling them that they're fucking trans, telling them they're in the wrong body, and not giving them the appropriate psychiatric help that they actually need from a competent doctor who can actually address their issues. But guess what, Bryan Young? You don't care about that. You have no desire to look past your nose. You just want to stay in your little echo chamber. You want to come out there on a white knight for Disney Star Wars trying to corrupt, damage, and destroy children because it makes you feel better hanging out with all your woke asshole friends. Well, guess what? Just like the Marvels has flopped, just like Deadpool and Wolverine has succeeded, just like Concord ended up being the #1 video game disaster in all of history out there. This ideology is being rejected by more and more people. So Bryan Young, I guess I will need to inform you that guess what? You're the freak. You're the baddie. You're the one on the wrong side of history. And as culture continues to evolve and it continues to move forward and rejects more of this nonsense, you will find out that for yourself. And you will just lash out and you will hate and you will probably end up going to your grave believing you were the right one and that we were all just a bunch of bigots and phobes and all the evils of the world were all our fault. Well, guess what? When you wake up and where you'll be spending an eternity, I think you'll realize exactly who the baddie was. And at the end of the day, Bryan Young, you will get exactly what you deserve.